We're going to get started. Please take a seat. Thank you for joining us for this panel session this afternoon. Of course, I think it's the most important session because it is about customers. And every panel or plenary session that I've attended the past 2 days, 3 days counting Monday, has talked about the importance of transformation in the industry to a customer-centric model. And so we're here today to talk about that with you, about putting customers in charge. And the actual name of the panel is How Utilities Can Drive More Value for Their Customers, Ready for Action. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we have a great panel with 3 utilities and 1 technology provider. And myself, I'm I work for a nonprofit that does consumer research. So I think we have all the bases covered for you. We're going to start with self-introductions from the panel. We'll introduce ourselves and our organization, and then I have prepared questions so that the reason you came here gets answered, so that you can find out what's in our minds and what do we know about helping customers take control of energy and have consumer engagement. And then that'll be 30 minutes, and then we will end the panel with 15 minutes of Q&A. Hopefully it'll quiet down as soon as everyone gets in and the door gets shut. We'll end with 15 minutes of audience Q&A and participation. So if you have questions, please write them down or remember them, because we'd love to have a very robust discussion with you. And if we can, that's where most of the learning happens. So I'll start and then we'll go through the panel. My name is Patty Durand. I'm the president and CEO of the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative. We are a 7-year-old nonprofit. We do national research on consumer engagement, on marketing strategy, on segmentation, on understanding the market, understanding who's out there and what they want and what they know. And so that's what we do, and we have a lot of research. Every member on this panel is a member, everyone on this panel is a member just about. So we have a lot of industry awareness and support for our work. So please introduce yourselves, panel.
My name is Felicia Etheridge, and I'm the Chief Customer Engagement Officer for CPS Energy. And my responsibility is ensuring all 1.1 million of our gas and electric customers have the best possible experience with us in any interaction that they choose to have.
I'm Terry Sobolewski. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for National Grid. We serve about 20 million people across the Northeast, from Buffalo to Brooklyn to Boston, covering Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York. In the interest of sharing, we've been on our customer transformation journey for about 3 or 4 years now, and excited to be a part of the panel. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Kimberly. I'm the Vice President of Customer Energy Solutions for Austin Energy. How many of you are Austin Energy customers? Thank you for being an Austin Energy customer. We value you as a customer. And if my other colleagues who've been part of the Energy Thought Summit haven't already said this, welcome to Austin. It's a great place to live, work, and play, and our customers are number one. We serve 460,000 residential and commercial and industrial customers in the Austin area. We're a vertically integrated municipal utility. We're regulated by our mayor and city council.
Good afternoon. My name is Dwight Scruggs with Allconnect. I'm our Senior Vice President of Client Services and Business Development. At Allconnect, I'm responsible for managing a great team of folks that support the 65 utilities that we work with nationally. Also going out and getting new utility partners and relationships. At Allconnect, we've spent the last 20 years really focusing on a lot of stuff, but the key is we pride ourselves on taking very complex things and making them less complex for the customer. Really understanding data analytics and using our platform to help engage and enroll customers in the programs and the services that are most important to those customers. Glad to be here.
So Dwight went last, but we'll save the best for first. So I'm going to ask Dwight a question. If you took the time to read the session description behind the title, you would have read that utilities are offering a lot of programs, but are generally receiving low enrollment for most of them. So what are utilities doing wrong? Or maybe another way to say this is, what could they do better and differently to increase enrollment? And I'd like for Dwight to start with that question.
Okay, good question. So, really, when it starts with, so I'm gonna hit on. I could talk about this all day because I love talking about customers. And like you kind of teed it up, Patty. This is the most exciting session because we're actually talking about the customer, right? So really, I'm just going to touch on like 4 things in response to that question. Okay. Number 1, you got to speak customer, right? So often, I've spent 12 years in the utility industry, and I speak fluent utility, but most customers don't speak fluent utility. And just to give you an example of like speaking customer, a few years ago we did like the Jay Leno hit the street with the microphone, and we just started asking customers about megawatts, kilowatts, grid, and they were like, "What you talking about, Willis?" Right? They were clueless. And so what we found, you got to like, number 1, speak customer, not utility, and that kind of ties into the next point that I want to hit, which is the education piece. And when you say speak utility, speak customer, you got to talk to whatever the solution is, whatever the product, whatever the program is. You got to explain to the customer, what does that mean to me? Because it does something to the customer. If not, you would not be doing it. It's either going to save me money. It's going to either make my energy more reliable. It's going to make the environment better. So find a way to tie that back to the customer in a way that they will understand. Third is targeting. Targeting is so important. And most utilities and businesses, we have more data about customers than we realize. But there's a disconnect. You have some companies that are really good at programs, and then you have some other companies that have a whole lot of data, but they don't know what to do with it. So you got to get in that middle ground and really target the specific program to the customer. It's kind of like if you're a utility and you send out shampoo, everybody on this panel would love shampoo, right? Except me.
I was going to say.
So I would be depressed, all right? So therefore, you got to target the message to the customer. So you got to educate them in that targeting process. And then another point I want to make is how you get it done is you got to look at the complete journey of the customer. One of the most underutilized touch points with the customer is the service initiation call, for example, right? The customer moves into your area and you contact them. If they engage you via the web, or if they engage you over the phone, this is the chance to make an impression. They're receptive to information. If you want to talk about my account, energy efficiency, and I'm not saying you have to do everything in that initial interaction, but that's a great opportunity to set the stage for a long-term relationship. And then the last one is be creative. Get out of your comfort zone. Good example. You have a customer, they move into you do a service initiation contact with that customer. Life is going good. If they haven't had an outage or they paid the bill on time, you probably never heard from them. They've been in their home a year, and this is a good example. They've been in home a year. Proactively reach out to that customer and say, "Hey, Mr. Scruggs, I noticed that you've been in your home for a year. Thank you for being a customer. Here's some programs that you're not taking advantage of that you might find advantageous. For example, you could use usage information. Your usage is a little high." And the last thing I'll say on that is, it's one thing to talk about usage and data, but what action comes from that? You can say, "Hey, here's a program. Take this thermostat," or whatever the case may be. It may drive down your energy usage. What we found out in our data shows, even if they don't accept the program, their brand perception of the utility and their feeling in CSAT goes up tremendously. So those are just a few things.
Those are some great nuggets, actually, more than nuggets, great memorable lines of ways to engage customers and ways to think about it. And it segues nicely into research we do. We do an annual flagship piece of research called the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative Market Segmentation Study. And we have segmentations or broad buckets of values and attitudes that customers have. And we know what customer motivations are, whether it's green energy or sustainability, or whether it's saving money, or whether it's being interested in technology, also known as early adopters, or whether they don't care, or whether they care but they can't figure out how to break through their lack of understanding and they need education. And each one of those buckets have different messages that can appeal to them. Maybe they would want the same program, but they would want to hear about it differently. And so that we're talking to them where they are and customer speak and not utility speak. So I really like that. I'd like to now move to National Grid and ask Terry a question about program enrollment, since we just set it up with some of Dwight's thoughts on how to engage customers. As an IOU, National Grid has experienced challenges in program enrollment for some programs, and I'd like to know how you've dealt with those issues. And I know that National Grid, I know also you probably have ideas and opinions around what the customer is going to be like in the future and what they want. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely, thank you. You know, as it relates to program enrollment, I think, you know, the things you said, Dwight, really hit home. But I'd probably take it back a step further. Dealing with enrollment once the program's established, you're in a bit of a reactive mode, and you can certainly adjust your segmentation, your targeting, your messaging, your offering even, but we have found that when we've been most successful is when we've actually engaged customers up front in the program development itself, co-developing the program with customers. And you know, just a quick example of that, some of you may be familiar with it, we launched our smart grid pilot in Worcester, Massachusetts, going back about 3 years ago. And when we first developed the filing, we did what perhaps some traditional utilities might do. We had our smartest 3 or 4 people go in a closet and figure out the plan for exactly how they would deliver that thing that those customers wanted most. And they came out with the plan, and we filed it at the DPU, and we got thrown out. And that was a bit of a humbling experience, but it caused us to go back into the community in Worcester, engage with community leaders, engage with customers. We went through a process we call appreciative inquiry. It's a pretty standard method that a lot of other folks have used. And we came back to a program that we knew, because of the feedback and the co-development, was something that that community was really going to engage in. And here we are now. I think it's about 2.5 years that the program's been running. It's an opt-out program, and we still have 98% retention of the 14,000 customers participating in that program. And so that tells us that when we get it right, it's because we've listened up front. We want to be a listening company, and that's the biggest cultural shift we're trying to make.
Okay, with all due respect, that was 3 years ago. Show me the money. What do you got going now?
Well, trying to build from that a couple of things. In Massachusetts, we're taking those learnings and we're applying them into the grid mod filing, which is live and soon to be updated, so we're excited to see where that takes us.
Great.
But we're also applying the learnings across the territories we serve. Some of the most interesting work I think we're doing right now are with some follow-on demonstration projects in New York, part of reforming the energy vision. We have, I think it's 4 of them going on right now, a low-income program in Buffalo, for what we call the Fruit Belt there. It's a neighborhood of folks close to the Buffalo Medical Campus. And again, working with the community, we developed a program. We're actually owning the solar panels on these customers' homes. They're taking the offtake and using it to offset their own utility bills. And we think it's a pretty innovative way to accomplish dual goals of incremental clean energy on the system, but also supporting customers who wouldn't otherwise be able to take advantage of that technology. We've got a microgrid going in Potsdam, a customer choice program in Clifton Park, and a distribution system platform, a transactional platform that we're testing in Buffalo. So all of those things are great in terms of innovation, better when we listen, but really the challenge for us, as you said, is, you know, show me the money. We got to work those into, bring them to scale and work them into the core of our operations through rate cases and other regulatory proceedings, which we're engaged in right now.
Wow, that's a lot. You've got a lot going on. Thank you. I'd like to turn now to the 2 muni representatives on the panel. So you guys are different in that you're not regulated, at least not like an IOU is. You're owned by your members or by the city, and so you have a whole different structure for getting approvals for your programs, for interacting with citizens, which is much more direct and immediate. So I'm sure the audience would love to hear from you about consumer engagement. How does that differ? What's working for CPS Energy and what's working for Austin Energy?
Go ahead. So I would say from a consumer or customer perspective, customers are the same regardless if they're an IOU customer versus a muni customer. Customers are customers, and they want what they want when they want it. You know, having worked in an IOU for most of my career, it's been a bit different, to your point about coming in and working at a muni. And while it may seem like it's nirvana, that you don't have regulator upon regulator, you have the ultimate regulators. You have your customers and your owners every day. You see them every day. They give you feedback every day. And what's important for us as part of the fabric of the community in San Antonio is that we really take the time to listen to what they tell us and incorporate that into what we do each and every day. in our business and in the products that we offer for each of our customers. Because at the end of the day, they are the reason that we are there and the reason that we exist.
Very good.
I'd like to add to that. I don't necessarily agree with the premise that we're not regulated. We are regulated by a publicly elected city council and mayor. And for those of us in the room that just went through a year-long effort to reduce our rates, it absolutely mimicked the type of proceeding that we would have gone through if we fell under the purview of the Public Utility Commission. We are owned by our customers, and we take our commitment to delivering value very seriously. We are not profit maximizers, we are cost minimizers. And so our objective is to deliver products and services to our customers that add value at the lowest possible cost. And one of the things that you just mentioned, Felicia, is really important. Listen to your customers. Use the enormous amounts of data that you mentioned, Dwight, on your customers so that you can understand what those customers expect, because they're not going to tell you. You need to know that. So we know in the case of our Green Choice customers, we have been consistently #1 in terms of voluntary subscriptions to our premium Green Choice offering. This is a 100% wind offering for public power utilities in the nation, year after year after year. But what have we discovered? That those customers that subscribe to Green Choice are huge fans of our Power Partner thermostat program, and vice versa. So I am a recovering pointy-headed finance person. I stayed away from marketing as long as I could until I was thrust into that position, and I absolutely loved it. So take all that data and leverage it to deliver on the needs that your customers have. And by the way, in the city of Austin, our customer base presents some challenges. Why? 55% of our residential customers rent. And if that's not a challenge in delivering products and services to your customers who are paying that tariff that funds those programs, I don't know what is. But the thing, and I've told my staff this, some of them are sitting in the room today, that gets me most excited day in, day out is coming in every day and figuring out what is it that I can do to deliver value to our customers and make that experience, that interaction, whether it's when they set up service or you market 10 years later to a customer, a Home Performance with Energy Star program, make that experience for the customer as easy and rewarding and fulfilling as possible.
Debbie, I'm curious, I'm surprised to hear you say 55% rent. And I think there's a misconception, I'd like you to tell me if it is, that renters are low income.
Oh, absolutely. There's a misconception.
Mostly. Okay. Tell us about your...
So, and I've listened in on a number of your webinars, so I'll give you a pitch for that because you've done great research. Any of you have millennial kids in the room? Any of you? I've got a 30-year-old. She's not a millennial. She's still living at home, and she'll probably be living at home for the rest of her life. I love her dearly, but she's just graduating and wants to be a school teacher. Yep, she'll be living with us for a long time. A lot of millennials don't want to own a home, right? If you do the research, a lot of them they have other value paradigms. And so in the case of Austin, for those of you who live here, you know it's pretty expensive, right? Buying a home is an expensive proposition, and folks like the freedom to move around. They are not predominantly low income. Do we have programs that reach those customers? Absolutely. But of our residential customer base, 47% of them live in multifamily housing. And you're downtown Austin right now. You see some of that multifamily housing? That is not low-income housing, my friends. Some of those places start at about $1 million for a small little one-bedroom unit. So I think you need to myth bust on that one.
Yeah, thank you.
And so it's important to know your
I think it's
customers.
important. I'm glad you're able to share that with the audience. A follow-up question for the Muni panelists. Do your customers make demands of your organization for green energy, for sustainability, for electric vehicles? Are you hearing that from people?
They make demands for everything.
For everything.
and so, like Debbie said, to your question, yes. Like I said, they are no different than any other customer base. They're just much closer to the source for us, right?
Right.
We see them as soon as we walk out of the building.
Because I cannot contact Tom Fanning at Georgia Power for my wants, but if I in a city, I can see my mayor quite easily.
Or you'll see our CEO. I mean,
Right, or your CEO,
right
or
on
general
the
manager.
sidewalk, right? And so, yes, our customers demand several things from us. So whether it be green power, whether it be electric vehicles, or whether it be something we have not even contemplated yet, we have to be ready and willing to take in that information and figure out what we can do to meet their needs and meet them where they want to be met.
Okay.
I would agree, and I'm a huge advocate for pilots. And so to your point about the 3 smartest people going into a closet and coming up with something that they think would be the be-all and end-all, don't do that. So, you know, we do research, we do focus groups, we do panels, and just recently we launched an electric vehicle 360 rate, a time of use rate for customers. And at first I thought, I'm not sure where this is going to go, because those customers had to make an investment up front to install a separate service panel for their off-peak charging. And if memory serves me, in a fairly short period of time, we had 100 customers that had signed up. We have yet to sink the first piece of steel in the ground for a community solar offering that will come about probably in late August or thereabouts. Over 100 customers signed up with virtually no marketing other than a brief mention in a Bill Stuffer newsletter last December. So they want it, and they're not unlike any other consumer. Customers want choice. I want choice. I want to shop on Amazon, I want to watch on Netflix, and I want everything else in between. And I think we're going to talk about this later. I don't want to compare myself just to CPS, although we do quite a bit of that. We have
The taco war I've heard about quite a bit.
very friendly rivalry going, but compare yourself to other service providers if you really want to raise the bar on delivering against customer needs.
Yeah, we have to quit thinking of ourselves as a utility company. I had this conversation earlier today. We have to do the customer speak. We have to quit saying kilowatt hours or therms. Who therms? I mean, like, that's whatever. But we have to help customers understand how we enable what they're trying to do and talk about. Like, we keep your beer cold. I mean, that's what we need to tell customers.
Yes.
And it costs 50 cents, right, to keep your beer cold. It's what it does for you, and get that message out as well.
I'd like to go back to Dwight now and talk about, just leveraging that, talk about, do customers compare their utility to other utilities or to other industries? Tell us what you know about that.
Know a lot about that. Yes, they definitely compare it to other companies that they do business with, not other utilities. Now, but on that utility thing, I live in Texas, right? So I live in Dallas, and I was part of ERCOT. And I got so spoiled because it's the competition. I had the apps and everything, and I moved, and I didn't have that stuff. So, and that's a rare exception. But for the most part, they compare it to, like you said, to Amazon, to Best Buy, and that becomes their expectation. And so we have to look at it that way, you know, and develop programs with that understanding. They expect the same responsiveness. And what we started to do at Allconnect is kind of compare ourselves to. We wanted to beat not a competitor or a utility. We wanted to beat Chick-fil-A, who last year was had the best customer service, Wegmans, right? And so we came in number 3. So those were our targets, Wegmans and Chick-fil-A. We had already beat Lexus, right? So we wanted to. That's the way we look at it as a business as well.
Yeah. And we did some research last year called Consumer Experiences and Expectations, and that research did that. We surveyed consumers and asked them a lot of questions about, do you compare your utility to other industries? If so, how does your utility rank? What are the actual things that utilities do versus other industries do that you like or don't like? And we determined that consumers are comparing utilities to other industries, not other utilities. We're able to confirm that with data and the research. So you're all right. And then we also were interested to find that consumers view banks as having better customer service than utilities. And I was a little surprised at that. But when you think about what banks are offering, that you can deposit your check with your cell phone, you can move money around with your cell phone, you can pay bills online, you can check your balance to the cent by the minute. How many of you can go on your utilities website and find out how much your electric bill is to date? Show of hands? 1, okay, about 6, so not many. So those are the sort of innovations that I think are coming, and that's what consumers are seeing, and it matters to them.
And Pat, just to follow up to that point now, one thing we have seen, because we deal with utilities across the country, so we see a lot, right? So, but for the most part, what we've seen also, I know utilities, like most businesses, you can have a tendency to beat yourself up. But what we see nationally is that for the most part, utilities, the brand power is amazing.
It is amazing, and that came out in the research too.
Yeah, the brand power is amazing. So what we found out is a lot of time the customer would actually prefer to get things from the utility.
They would.
You know, and so with that mindset, I think there's a huge opportunity nationally for utilities to kind of latch onto that and establish a relationship with that customer that allows the customer to get conditioned to come to the utility for certain things that they don't come to the utility for today. And it's just kind of as an example, I mean, think about the marketing and brand opportunity, because we all will go to, like Kim and I, we'll go to Starbucks every day. And we'll spend $6 and wait in a line at Starbucks and smile about it, right? and like, oh my God, that's great, yes, right? And then we'll complain about a $150 a month utility bill, which is basically $5 a day that powers everything in our house. So there's a huge opportunity. You have great brand perception, but if we can latch onto that, I think there's a huge opportunity.
It's an embedded trust
Yes.
that customers have. You know, I've been around since dirt, and I can remember I can remember the days.
I'm with you there,
Okay.
Felicia, just
I can
saying.
remember the days when meter readers had keys, right, to get in to read people's meters, and no one quibbled that we had a key to their house, basically, right? And they trusted us, and you know, we not sure you ever leveraged that the way you should.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring Terry into the conversation. I'm going to ask 2 questions. One is top barriers, and one is successes. So you've already talked about your successes with the Worcester pilot. What do you think some of the top barriers are to attracting customers to programs?
Well, I think it's, obviously connected to some of the themes we've been talking about here already. Ease and value are, I think, really the 2 variables we work with most. And sometimes they play off of each other. Of course, if you can achieve both, it's a real home run. But certainly, first and foremost, I think things have to be easy for customers to consume. And so whether it be the new connection process that you were talking about, Dwight, or energy efficiency marketing, these have to be presented in ways that it's very easy and intuitive for customers to engage. And we're not always great at that. We see all the complexity in delivering something. We don't always take advantage of looking for the simplicity. I think the other part is having it be creating value, but really more specifically, having something that's compelling for a customer. And we've seen a couple of different programs that we've deployed where when you hit on a real point of value for a customer, you can get a strong reaction. Even if you don't have the perfect delivery, again, it's best to have both, but even if you don't have the perfect delivery, if you can get to a real point of value, something that really matters to that customer. A comparison to a neighbor would be one example. New energy solutions that help customers leverage the trust that they have in utilities, but through the utilities get exposure to and assistance in shopping for different solutions. And so in Rhode Island, as an example, we have a SolarWise platform. It's a tool that helps customers understand what their options are in terms of solar. Very open source, open to all the different participants in the market, but it leverages the role that utilities can play to make sure that information is presented to customers in the most objective way. And those are the things that really get at, I think, the key value points for customers.
Good. And I think that's really interesting to hear that, because I think a lot of times in the industry, especially more senior people, although not this panel, but other panels I've heard senior people say, that customers don't care. They just want the cheapest bill and they want the power to come on when they flip the switch. But I think what Debbie said belies that, because they did a simple bill stuffer and 100 people signed up for a program that isn't the cheapest thing going, because it met some other value they had before any steel was in the ground. So if we understand what those values are, then we can meet customers around those values, and the utility can win and the customer can win, and the industry is better off. So let me move on from there to Dwight again. I'd like to talk about analytics, share with us how Allconnect uses analytics to benefit customers and to facilitate utility enrollment or move, connect,
So
disconnect.
we would be dead in the water without analytics. I mean, because part of our success in having high enrollment of programs is really talking to the customer about things that's most important to them.
To them, and you
Yeah.
already know some of that.
And you
through
already know some of
analytics.
that. This is an example. A lot of people don't think about this, but even just at a zip code +4 level, there's some common tendencies, right? You can look at your service area, and I guarantee you, like there's certain zip codes, they're going to have a higher probability for a low-income program. There are others that's going to have a higher enrollment rate and be more interested in renewables, right? So just starting there, and that goes back to the whole thing with customers saying, the customers get excited when they see that you know me.
That's
Right? So if you're lead in with the customer, whatever that channel may be, through a voice channel, digital channel, or mail stuffer, is if you're just sending stuff out, the same thing to everybody, they get, that doesn't mean anything to me, right? But we found out if we talk to a customer, for example, we had a program with where one of our partners was struggling enrollment on a demand response product, right? It would probably maybe 10% enrollment rate. Just on the mover program alone, when the customers are moving into their home, we had upwards of 60% of those eligible customers enroll in that program.
Wow.
And it was primarily, it's not like it's magic or anything, but it's basically targeting and talking to the customers that are going to have a higher probability to be interested in that program, and not treating it like a transaction, but as an opportunity. And so actually, because a lot of times you have, Felicia and I were talking about this earlier, I'm an old call center guy. And so my metrics of average handle time hindered me from doing a lot of things, right? So, but having programs where you're not governed by the clock and slowing down and explaining something to the customer is impactful. So you start off with the data piece, but then explaining it. And also the last thing I'll say on that is sometimes we look at analytics in an outward fashion. We also have to look at analytics internally. So like there's certain things with your CSRs in your call center. Using analytics to determine how you hire, how you train, teaching them when a customer says X, Y, and Z, what that means, right? And so if you do it on both sides and leverage analytics that way, you're going to have more success in enrollment of your programs.
Great. Well, that's a good answer. That's very interesting. I think analytics, the cloud computing, all those things are really exciting. We are in a major industry transformation. On the prior panel to this one, someone said strategy eats culture for lunch. It's a Peter Drucker quote. And I like that. I think it helps answer a lot of the struggles that we've had with consumer enrollment, program creation. Utilities are in the midst of turning the Titanic, and it's a big deal. So I'd like to now open it up to the audience, because we do have a panel of experts here who are experts in customer enrollment and program design and marketing, and I'd love to hear what your questions are for us. Yes, sir, in the front.
And so, Chief Customer Officer is kind of a newer role, relatively, from what we've heard in the past. So it sounds like you represent me. So what do you guys do to learn who I am and what motivates me? And then take that back in your organization that's slow moving, potentially, and make that kind of stuff happen. And at the end of the day, how do you get measured on your success?
Several questions in there. You only got one. So yeah, mine's a little different. Chief Customer Engagement Officer actually means that in my role, I have responsibility for engagement wherever we touch the customer across the board. I mean, literally across the board. And for us, it really is back to where we started talking earlier. We have to listen to what you tell us. And I have to make sure that I'm hearing what you're saying. So I have to constantly say, is this what you mean? Not you personally, obviously. But test what you're saying with me so that I can also test it with other customers, take that feedback, incorporate it into our decision making, and then make sure that all of our employees who serve customers, or those who serve customers, because I think there are only two kinds of employees in our company, right? Those who directly serve you and those who serve you. Make sure that they understand what you're telling us and how you want us to interact with you, what kind of products and services, what your expectations are for us and how we need to meet them. With respect to how we're measured, how aren't we measured is probably an easier way. But it's all of the data points that you can imagine, whether it's customer sat, whether it's level of effort, how much effort does it take for you to deal with us, how easy do we make it, do we offer products that are convenient and give you control and choice, what sort of reputation or trust factor do we have with you. So it's a whole dimension of ways that we're measured on our success for you.
And I would add to that too, you need to think not like a utility, you need to think like an Apple, for example. So if you were to call into our residential call center, that CSR, that call center representative, would be using something that we developed internally. It was called the 360 view of the customer. So we know your name, we know the products and services that you've subscribed to. If you have a smart meter, an interval meter, we have a sense of what your 15-minute usage is. We have an idea of what programs and services, including free programs and services, would be helpful to you. So when I call in, on the rare occasions I have to call Apple, they know my name, they know what I subscribe to, they have a general sense, not even just because of the data that they have directly, but data they've purchased on me. They know what my buying habits are. So they know I have a green dot right here on my head, and I am going to be, and I'm so unhappy that I was not #1 customer to sign up for community solar, that there were about 20 people ahead of me after that insert went out. So they need to understand who you are and the fact that you're not like just any other customer, and then measure successes based on things like voice of the customer, a survey that we field on a regular basis, in addition to JD Power, in addition to eSource surveys, so that if we see something start to head south, we can immediately work to correct it.
And what other questions do we have from the audience? Yes, sir. On the right, yeah.
Hi, so in terms of investments, both financial need as well as human resources, we've made a lot of investments in call centers, in CIS, back office buildings, and that type of areas with huge investments in technology as well. How much of that, how quick is that shifting to customer engagement investments in terms of projects, programs, money, and resources? Is that in the past? Is that hard to, because you still need to keep on delivering your safe, reliable, affordable power and answer questions about bills and outages and things like that. So how much are you able to shift already to a broader customer engagement, new products and services, more engagement from a resource perspective there?
Yeah. I think the shift is happening pretty quickly. We have at National Grid, I'll talk about it in a couple of quick levels. At the ground level, we're going to allocate a couple of tens of millions of dollars to investment in customer-facing processes, activities, programs, solutions over the next couple of years. Above that, we've actually, our business is substantially focused on regulated activity in the UK and in the US, but we've actually created an entire third arm of our business around ventures, and it can be regulated, unregulated, or otherwise, because we see that boundary is beginning to blur, and we need to find ways to bridge to the value, the opportunities to create value for customers. And so that's another area of investment. And then last, there's technologies and companies that we're actively investing in. We're part of a venture fund, and so we're seeing a lot of activity on that front as well. And those are all substantially, not all, mostly customer-facing product, services, and investment. So I think that the shift is happening pretty quickly.
Other questions? Yes, sir, all the way in the back, standing up.
Yeah, so this week we talked a lot about how we've shifted from talking about ratepayers to consumers to customers. What do you see as the next term, knowing that language is valuable and important, that we'll use to define that group? Is it a partner? What term do you see beyond just the customer?
Well, you touched on a couple of things that usually make my hair catch on fire, which is don't ever refer to your customers as ratepayers. I can't think of a more derogatory term. You pay the rates that we set. I mean, that just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. And they're not meters. They're not accounts. They are customers, and I've heard it quite a bit at the conferences I've attended and spoken at. You know, going from a consumer to a prosumer, I think there's validity in that. I view our challenge as looking at our customers as our trusted partners. Utilities generally have a high degree of trust that they get from their customers, but don't ever take that trust for granted. I believe SGCC recently did a study where they said if there is one bad transaction that occurs with a customer, 85% of those customers will essentially, tell me if I get this wrong, Patty, write you off. So put that trust at the highest possible level. They're customers in my book. I don't know if I could say thank you for being a prosumer of Austin Energy. That my tongue kind of trips around on that one. But a valued trust customer, just as I said at the outset when I thanked the Austin Energy customers.
I'd love to just offer one other quick comment on that. I think we spend a lot of time talking about how we think of customers, and even that I think is the wrong premise. I think it's actually worth spending some time evaluating some of our own belief structures, because behaviors follow beliefs, and I think, you know, we're trying to be more humble. We're trying to listen more, and so part of it is, you know, how we think of customers, but also it's getting, you know, we have 15,000 employees in the U.S., and we have to ourselves think of ourselves as a part of the equation, not the ones bringing the answer to some, you know, problem that we have sole purview to solve. So I think that's a key part of the equation. When we do that right, you start to see shifts in ways of working. I mean, I think the key theme that I've sort of been picking up on here is that we're all trying to, and by the way, this is a Northeast analogy, right? But we're trying to all skate to where the puck's going to be.
Yeah, not so much.
That doesn't play in Austin.
I get that one.
I guess I don't have the home field advantage like you guys do. But my point is that to do that effectively, we have to work differently from within our companies. And I think that's really the key shift that we're trying to accomplish. It's not just the technical aspects of program development and segmentation and all these other bits and pieces. We have to think differently. We have to work differently.
It's a cultural mind shift in your organization, right? Just shifting the whole organization to think from the outside in, and what would a customer expect, right? And question ourselves.
Just add one real quick on that. Just a good example of what you're saying, Terry, is last year we hosted an event, a utility summit in Cleveland, and First Energy was the host utility, and we brought in the CEO of the Cleveland Cavaliers, like Lynn, and he was talking about everybody in this room at one point in your life, you've had jokes about Cleveland. Right? It's like, Cleveland's terrible, right? So they had to change the mindset of the city, and what they realized, they did surveys and found out that the people in Cleveland didn't like Cleveland. So before they could change the visitors, making visitors want to come to Cleveland, they had to get the people that lived in Cleveland to believe in Cleveland. And I think that's the same way with our companies. The employees have to feel good about the company and the value that they bring to customers. And then that will like spread in ways that we can't even imagine. Creativity and all types of things.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one question. I'm going to go with Eric in the back there.
Thanks. So I'm going to ask kind of a Texas-y question since we're in Texas. So about 5 million Texans live in households that are below the poverty line. About 12 million Texans earn $50,000 or less. So a lot of the enabling technology that's been deployed for all the newfangled AMI services and all the downstream services that we've been talking about were largely deployed with some or a lot of ratepayer contribution. So in my mind, that makes the equity conversation extremely important. So my question to you is, would you do your best to give me a non-touchy-feely and a non-regulatory mandated utility value proposition for reimagining how you provide services and products to low-income consumers or low-income prosumers?
Well, first, they're customers, not ratepayers.
Oh, I said ratepayers, not ratepayers.
Oh, you say ratepayers. You didn't see Debbie and I twitch?
We were twitching in unison up here, just for the record.
So now I lost my train of thought. So what would we do for low-income customers, basically? A non-rate-based, what other kind of disclaimer?
What's the utility value proposition for providing these services to low-income consumers?
So, as a utility, not to start as a utility, but we've always had a history of helping out low-income customers. And I understand your point about how it's funded. I get that. For When I think about low-income customers, though, we do have to have different ways for customers to interact with us. I was just looking at, it was actually this morning when they were talking about customers who could choose how they pay, right? I could choose to pay you $10 this week. And I'm sorry, I can't remember who that was. But I can pay you $5 next week. We have to think more like that, what we can do for those customers and offer up programs and services, even prepay. You know, prepay usually has a really bad connotation to some companies, but customers are so used to prepaying today, regardless of your socioeconomic status. You prepay for your phone, you prepay for Netflix, you prepay for almost everything you do in your life. I don't know why we don't make the leap and finally get there as an industry.
And I'll add to that, the best thing you could do is to make sure that the prices that you charge your customers are as low as possible, irrespective of income level. And so at Austin Energy, that is absolutely something we live by, is to keep our rates as low as possible. But then you need to look at how you go about reaching those customers. So here was one of my recent aha moments. We've done a lot in terms of low-income weatherization, and those customers are automatically enrolled in our low-income discount program. So they receive a 10% discount if they receive about 9 different services. They receive a 10% discount. They don't pay a customer charge. So we do a lot for those customers without them even asking for it. But then we have a very active low-income weatherization program. It's free. You go out and you weatherize a house, you provide 5, 6 measures to that house. Why is it that only 1 in about 20 or 30 customers that you reach out to signs up for that? It's free. It's my favorite 4-letter word. So recently we said, all right, we're going to try something different. And this one's not an easy one because it required doing outbound calling out of our call center, something that was completely antithetical to something we've done before. We're going to do outbound calling from Austin Energy, and before we send out that call, we're going to send a letter to those customers in English and in Spanish, advising them that they were going to get that phone call, offering them free weatherization. Do you think they trusted us more rather than just getting a phone call at dinner time or not getting the phone call at all because they weren't home if they got the letter and the phone call? They got a couple of touch points. Yes, they did, and we've seen an increase in the number of subscriptions to our program. So again, to kind of echo what was said before, think like a customer, don't think like a utility. Not everybody is going to trust that stranger calling them during the dinner hour to offer them something for free.
That is great. That is a good story. And with that, we'll end. We're out of time. We're on a break now, so thank you for attending, and please join me in thanking the panel.
Yeah, worked out great.